In this video, I'm going to give you a trick, a strategy, you could say, that's going to allow you to combine hundreds, literally, of different sequences, licks, whatever it is that you do when you're soloing on the fretboard, and combine them into one entity in the fastest way possible. And I can say that because this is a matter of mouth. But let's just say that, just to keep it simple, right, that you have 10 entities, 10 things that you can do on the fretboard, like sequences, licks, different things. And you want to be able to combine them. You know, good luck with that, because if you take, like, say, this one first here, the first little sequence, we need to combine that with that, this, and this, and that, and this, and that, and then that gives us 10 different combinations, right? But then you take this one, that has 10 as well. That, you know, remember in the previous video we talked about it's different to go from this sequence to that sequence than it is to go from that sequence to this one. It's a different shift in your fingers, and we don't see that. That's why we struggle. But when we see that, we can actually start practicing that specifically and be very conscious about what it is that we're practicing. But just say, like, we got like 10 entities here, is at least 100 combinations, right? But then again, if I go from number 1 to number 2, but then I want to go from number 2 to number 3 very rapidly, that is its own challenge. It really is. It's a new pattern. So basically what you have is little building blocks when you practice, and you want to put them together. And putting 1 after 2 after 3 and combining it with 5 and then go to 4 is another thing to practice than going from 3 to 1 to 2 to, right? It's because, right, it's a pattern shift. Because patterns basically allows us to improvise. It allows us to come up with things because the brain simply can't think that fast, right? So it needs patterns that it can push, like 1, 2, 3, ba-da-da, ba-da-do, ba-da-dee. And then you combine all these ba-da-dee, ba-da-do, ba-da-dee, da-da-da, right, into a line. So we need patterns. But patterns, again, are a way of moving, and the way to practice them is to go over and over and over again, right? It's like that's the way to practice a pattern, and pretty soon your brain is hypnotized, completely programmed like a robot to go, right? And now we have to combine it with something else, right? And so we have to break that pattern that we have spent, you know, an inordinate amount of repetitions building, and then pushing it into another pattern and making that fluent and natural. Right? And when you got that many patterns to work with, then the invisibility of each integration challenge is huge. So what do top players do? What can we see that they do? And we can actually, if we dissect their solos, we can see that. And I did so. I know I was looking into that. And these days it's not that hard because we got YouTube videos and you can see, we can slow it down. And you can start seeing the patterns that they use when they improvise. And you can start seeing what do they do to get from one pattern to another. And that is what I call the bridge. Because if you, let's say you take something, you take number 1, and instead of combining, you know, number 1, that's your bridge now, right? And then I learned to go from this bridge to this one. Then for the bridge to that one and back again. So I can go back and forth between the bridge and this one, right? Back and forth. Then I do the same thing with number 3 or 4, 3 out of the 4, and then with number 4. Cool thing. And then if I need to go for, you know, I play this first, number 1, and then I play number 2. Instead of going and integrating these two and go back and forth between these two patterns, what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip to this first and then to that, because this one is connected to everything. That didn't take that long to practice. Connecting everything I know to the same little pattern. I'm going to demonstrate that in a second, right? And so once I want to get from this to that, I go over the bridge first. Once I want to go from this to that to this, I go, and you might say, well, that's going to sound weird because then I hear this bridge all the time, right? So let's just demonstrate that. Let's say that just something we know, so we don't go into the string skipping thing immediately. Let's say you have a 6-note pattern. Let's say this simple sequence is your bridge, right? So you got, like, say, this sequence, this one. Oh, I just hit the 2 note. That's one sequence. And then you got, right? What I then do, instead of trying to, instead of combining these two, which would be 1 and 2, right? I go through the bridge, which is, it's so simple that it's nothing, right? Nobody says, oh, he's playing the bridge again. No, those are just notes. But it's a pattern in my fingers. So I can go, right? And I can practice that. I can practice, and I can practice going. Right? So now I can go seamlessly in between the two. Then I take my bridge and I go. That was my second sequence, right? Then I go. Right? Sorry, I go. I can go into my bridge all the time, man. It's just because I've been building that as an add-on, little on every single sequence, right? So now I have my connection link that I can then go. And because the bridge is so simple, then it's almost not there. It's just a pattern that I make sure that I attach to everything I learn. So I can go. You didn't hear it in there, but it's everywhere, right? But since it's just 3 notes up and down, you won't hear it because it's just notes. The same thing we do, right? Once we start learning anything else, is that we establish that bridge firsthand, right? And then we connect these little gears or sequences to the same bridge. And then we can, in record time, combine all of them. This is actually, now I say it's fast, it's rapid, but it's also the only way of doing it. Because there's no way your brain is going to learn to combine 100 different little things, right? It's not going to happen. That's why every top player, the brain at least, right, of every top player did this. And you can see it once you dissect their solos and see what they're doing. So, but if you're, have a lot of licks down, you have some lines down, some cool, right? What can you do in order to establish some way of getting from one to the other that is the same way every single time, right? Is it like, right? What also happens is that once you have this bridge under your fingers, when you're playing fast, you go to the bridge whenever. That happens in the brain. Whenever you don't know what to play, you go to the bridge. That's what happens. So you go, right? So it kind of loops. It's standing on a platform of a loop that it uses in order for it to figure out what to do next, right? So instead of stopping, you just go directly to the bridge. And that happens almost automatically in the brain once you start working with this little concept here. See you around.